The latest, accusation against Brett Kavanaugh that came out from Michael Avenatti, representing a woman, a new accuser. Jim Garrity summed it up on National Review Online, saying the accuser contends that she attended at least 10 house parties over a 3-year period. It began when Kavanaugh was 15 or 16 years old. And she contends that similar parties, quote, occurred nearly every weekend during the school year. And then she goes on to contend that Kavanaugh and his friends engaged in criminal activities, including sexual assault on numerous occasions. From that description, it sounds like she witnessed some of these assaults, Garrity goes on, and then continue to attend parties. Then Garrity goes on and says she contends that Kavanaugh and Mark Judge obtained either alcohol or drugs such as Quaaludes or grain alcohol to spike the punch at these parties. She contends numerous boys were involved in multiple acts of sexual assault, literally lining up outside of a room, waiting their turn to commit sexual assaults. And in other words, a gang train rape is the words that she used. And as far as we know, not a single victim or witness ever called the police. As far as we know, not a single witness or victim ever told their parents, teachers, or any other responsible adult. And as far as we know, the accuser is the only person who ever attended these parties who has ever come forward making this claim, although she says that there are people that will back her up. And then he goes on, nothing related to this multi-year conspiracy to commit repeated acts of ritualized sexual assault ever came up in 6 FBI background checks or White House security clearance checks. And joining us now to weigh in on all of this, Joe diGenova, Victoria Tunsing of diGenova and Tunsing. Thank you both for being with us. I'll just, Victoria, start with you and just get your initial thoughts on all of this. There's a lot to unpack here. Not the least of which is, at one point, this new woman is claiming that in order to avoid being a victim, she just wouldn't drink the punch, but she kept attending the parties, and she knew that this activity was going on at these parties, and nobody said a word to anybody at any point, any time.
As a woman, not as a lawyer, just as a woman, it boggles my mind. She's telling me that when she was about 18 years old, or she's telling all of us, when she was about 18, she went to parties and saw women being raped and drugged and didn't report it to the police, and then returned at approximately 10 parties. I'm a writer by trade before I went to law school, and I read this affidavit, and it's one of the poorest written documents I have ever seen. I mean, it's just vague all over the place. Like, he didn't want to know exactly which houses she went to the party. He didn't ask for any more names of any other people that were witnesses. It's just this vague accusations. She doesn't say the date of her birth. You're supposed to do that to establish that you're the age of majority. In order to be able to swear to something, you have to establish that in the affidavit. Where is that? Did you practice law?
I read the comments of Lindsey Graham saying, quote, I have a difficult time believing, Joe, that any person would continue to go to, according to the affidavit, 10 parties over a 2-year period of time where women were routinely gang raped and not reported. Why would any reasonable person continue to hang out with people like this? Why would any person continue to put their friends and themselves in danger? Isn't there some duty to warn others, he says. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the affidavit is clearly suspect by virtue of its own content. It commits suicide in its language. She is clearly at least 2 years older than all the other people attending the parties. She keeps going to the parties. She never reports it to the police. She doesn't give her date of birth. She doesn't say whether or not she's married or single. She doesn't say whether or not she is a registered Democrat or a registered Republican or an independent. This affidavit, this declaration or affidavit, whatever it is, smacks of falsehood. And considering the source, which is the Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, and this woman's, the entire posture of this document just smells false.
You know, I've been watching all of this unfold. We'll start with Professor Ford, Victoria. And in the interim, remember, Dianne Feinstein, the Democrats knew about this in July, and they held it back. And then when the Republicans were finally able to get the name of the 4 people that Professor Ford had said were witnesses, the identities of other people that she claimed were at the party where that abuse allegedly took place, well, they got into contact, and the Judiciary Committee reached out to every person for a confidential interview, and all of them denied having any knowledge of any of these parties matching Dr. Ford's description. Then we've got the New Yorker. The New Yorker comes out with a case about a woman named Deborah Ramirez. And when we get into the content of that story, she admits that she wasn't totally sure if it was Kavanaugh that was the perpetrator, spent almost a week thinking about it, and admitted she was quickly inebriated at the party. Her words, foggy, slurring her words, admitting she had significant memory gaps from that evening, et cetera, and it goes on from there. And other witnesses to that case were flatly denying the charges, saying it never happened. Even the New York Times said, well, not only did they interview dozens of people over the past week to corroborate the story of Ms. Ramirez, but more than that, Ms. Ramirez, they said, was contacting Yale classmates, asking them if they recalled the incident, and told some of them that she couldn't be certain that it was Kavanaugh that was the one that exposed himself. So that's allegation 1 and 2. Now this is allegation 3. They withheld allegation 1 for weeks and weeks to create this pressure time capsule now where they can accuse Republicans, if they go forward with a vote, of being insensitive and uncaring to women.
And I'm surprised that the Republican senators have not, every one of them said, Senator Feinstein, you violated the rules. This is a place where these kinds of allegations are supposed to be kept confidential until the veracity of them is known. That's how it works up there, because Joe and I have both worked up there. The allegations are made. The Republicans and the Democrats get together and decide how they're going to pursue them. Usually each staff person, they have former FBI people on their staffs as investigators. They send them out, and if they cannot be verified, they come back and they say, hey, we can't verify it. Then they are never, ever mentioned, Sean. This is an outrage that they made this public. If they are verifiable, then they come back, they bring in the candidates, the nominee, and they say, hey, you got some problems here, maybe you want to withdraw your name. Then they don't ever announce what the problems are. They allow the person to go off. This is to encourage good people to go through the process. And that's what Judge Kavanaugh is talking about when he says we cannot discourage good people to want to volunteer for their country.
You look at the chronology in the case of Julie Swetnick, the person that's being represented by the new face of the Democratic Party, Michael Avenatti, and she says she attended more than 10 of these parties where women were routinely drugged and raped, and Brett Kavanaugh was present, but Kavanaugh was in high school in 1981 and 82 when she said she was at these parties. According to the New York Times, Swetnick said herself she was in college at the time. Now is there an inconsistency in that point, Joe? In other words, I don't know college kids that go back and hang out with their high school friends that much.
I must say that it is inconceivable, unless she is the weirdest woman in the world who would have gone to college and would have gone back to these parties. Again, the affidavit just smells of falsehood, and the inconsistencies internally make it abundantly clear that this was put together very quickly and is missing all the essentials of a verifiable affidavit. I do not believe, after there was this frightful reaction this morning from people, this is all over, this will end it. I don't believe it does. I actually think it strengthens Judge Kavanaugh's case. I think the committee should go forward with the hearing tomorrow, whether or not Dr. Ford shows up or not, and they should simply roll over the Democratic objections, and they should hold a vote on Friday. If they do not hold a vote, they are going to be in the worst type of political trouble. This is an outrage. What Victoria said earlier is what matters. You will never get people to want to be federal judges or do anything else except the worst type of candidates.
Well, there might be the first evidence that Grassley is caving. The Des Moines Register said, quoting Grassley, is saying, well, it could take place or it could not on Friday, depending on what happens tomorrow. I guess he means at the hearing.
He's just doing that, John. He's just saying that so he's covering himself because he can't anticipate what's going to happen at the hearing. The very fact that he announced it 3 days before, which is required under the Senate rules, means that he's serious to go forward.
Listen, I've known both of you a long time. There's a reason why I warn my audience, radio and television, every 2 years, every 4 years, this is what you're going to hear about Republicans, that they're racist, that they're sexist, misogynistic, Islamophobic, homophobic, xenophobic, that Republicans, if they don't support environmental extremism, they want dirty air and dirty water. They breathe it and they drink it. They want kids to die. They don't care about children. And there's going to be some congressional look-alike with grandma in a wheelchair being thrown over a cliff. Those are the tactics politically. And now, consistently, we see with any Republican president appointing a Supreme Court justice, we can expect a Borking, a Clarence Thomas, now a Kavanaughing, if you will.
This goes beyond the pale. I mean, I know Brett Kavanaugh. He's one of the most unassuming people. The very thought that he behaved like this at any time in his life is just inconceivable when you know the man and you know his demeanor. This is not.
Well, you could get 220 people to go back in your high school years and college years to say great things about you, but Joe and I could never have that happen. And he did.
But true. I was just admitted to the Columbus, Indiana Bulldog Hall of Fame last week.
Well, congratulations.
Me and my kids.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I think it's really important to appreciate where we are. Apropos of your comment, Sean, we are at a fulcrum point in history. This is the Republican Party's test for the next 25 years. They have to get this done. These are false charges. It is now clear that this is a campaign designed to destroy a good man, but worse than that, they want to destroy his wife and his daughters. Last night on Fox, some commentator who was on the show that I cannot remember said that that Kavanaugh had to worry about his daughters. He had the unmitigated gall to bring up the children in a conversation about this. I have to tell you something. My anger level at this has reached a fever pitch. I am expecting my party to defend this man to the hilt. To the hilt.
And if they do not, they will be rewarded. And they will do it again without batting an eye.
They, meaning the Democrats.
Yes.
You know, just saying somebody's racist when they're not. Remember the James Byrd ad in 2000? I mean, think of how deceptive that was. They got the daughter, this horrible evil was perpetrated on this man. I think his first name was James Byrd. And the daughter said, it's like my father was killed all over again because George Bush didn't support hate crimes legislation. What the ad left out is George Bush supported the death penalty for the evil perpetrated on that innocent man.
Well, how about Harry Reid saying, hey, people tell me that Romney didn't pay his taxes for 10 years. People tell me that. And then he joked about it later, and the press laughed with him, how that was such a clever thing to have done.
Well, Ted Kennedy did to Robert Bork.
The Democrats have changed the public discourse on nominations and politics in general. To watch that clownish senator from Hawaii make her incompetent, ignorant comments about due process,
shut up, man.
The presumption of innocence, and about all men. Let me say this to the senator from Hawaii.
Well, if you ever meant it, and I know what you're saying, if any man says that about her, yeah, the outrage that will come your way. You know, shut up to men. It's just horrible. I don't know how this is going to play out in 41 days. We've got to watch, wait, and see. But these are unbelievable times. Joe, thank you. Victoria, thank you.